Hello, APIDays New York. I'm coming to you from San Francisco, unfortunately. Hopefully next year we can do this in person. This is still a better situation than my APIDays Australia one, though. Not only am I out a trip to Australia, I now have to give a talk at 4 a.m., so we'll see how that goes. So my name is Gregory Koberger, and I will be your guide for the next 20 minutes or so, plus 5 minutes of Q&A. I'm the founder of README. So README, we build UI for APIs. From docs to community to dashboard to tools for understanding how people are using you, README handles everything that isn't the API itself. Today, I'm going to be talking about building magical developer experiences. We all know the feeling. You're using a new dev tool and something works so incredibly well that you're like, whoa, magic. Now, this talk's going to be a little interactive. So you'll need two things in a minute. First, you'll need to go to apidays.readme.com. You can do that right now, so you're ready. Second, you'll need to make an API call, so have whatever CLI or program you use ready to go. All right, let's talk about APIs. They're supposed to be easy, right? You make a request to a URL, and you get a response. Yet, in reality, APIs are never actually that simple. Somewhere along the line, we've taken this simple concept and made it so incredibly confusing. Look at sending data, for example. There's over 6 ways to send data on each request. Query params, body params, form data, cookies, headers, path params, and they're all serialized in completely different ways. That's crazy, but we all just accept it. People just want to charge a credit card or send a text, but we make it so difficult. Why? The only goal of your API is to be used. Yet somehow, we put up a ton of roadblocks and make it a torturous experience. Let's do a quick exercise. Close your eyes and think of the best API on the internet. Really think about it. Imagine it. Now open your eyes, and I'm going to try to guess what you were thinking. Was it Stripe? Or maybe Twilio? I might not have gotten it right, but for most people in the audience, you thought Stripe or Twilio. And that's kind of crazy, isn't it? There's literally hundreds of thousands of APIs out there, yet everyone always says the same thing. It seems that despite the near infinite number of APIs, there somehow aren't many good ones out there. Now, this conference is for legacy industries, and that applies to legacy APIs. One of the biggest problems with improving your API is that they're almost impossible to change once you're in production. You don't want to break anything for anyone, so you're stuck. But that's a horrible excuse. There's a ton you can do. In fact, I'm going to add an extra constraint to this talk. We're going to talk about transforming legacy APIs into magical experiences without touching the API itself. It's not even as hard as you'd think. Remember when you pictured your favorite API? You probably weren't thinking about JSON or XML, right? You're probably imagining their documentation. Remember when I said we're going to write some code? It is time. All right. Head over to apidays.readme.com and we'll get started. The first person to put their name on the leaderboard will win. In just a moment, the website's going to reload, and you'll have access to all the docs. You'll have about 2 minutes, and while this is happening, I'm going to play a song I wrote about APIs. Ready, set, go.
Last night when I sent you a request, you returned a status quo. One I didn't expect. Everything used to be 200 okay, but now you 410 gone away. When we first met you were pretty skeptic, but my 429 too many requests were 202 accepted. We started out as friends and then we became lovers, but now you want to 303 see others. I can't believe you won't be coming.
Okay, I've turned off the docs for a minute. Don't worry, we'll do this again in a second. That was not a pleasant experience. You're stuck running around trying to find clues in different places and bring them all together. You have to set up a full dev environment, or at least a terminal or Postman. You probably had to Google the curl arguments or something like that. It was a bit like an escape room, right? But a lot less fun. There's no reason it has to be that hard. The docs were terrible, but they aren't that far off from what most docs out there look like. I choose common tropes to see all the time in API documentation. So now we're going to do it one more time, except I'm going to make some changes to the documentation. There still haven't been any improvements to the API itself. It's still pretty crappy. Just the documentation. First, I'm going to put all the information you need to make an API call on every single page. When we write docs, we structure it a certain way, like a book, where we try to reuse content as little as possible. But that's not how people tend to read documentation online. They tend to go to a certain page and start there, either because it seemed like the page they wanted, or they got there directly via Google. No one wants to jump around looking for clues. It costs you absolutely nothing to include the same information on every single page, so each documentation page is self-contained. Next, I have a foolproof trick for you. It doesn't matter how horribly bad your API is. There's one surefire way to make it easy to use, no matter how convoluted or complicated it is. Code samples. Rather than forcing people to cobble together requests on their own, we can cut out so much work by just giving them a damn code snippet that runs. So, I've added one. Having a code sample removes so much ambiguity. How should things be encoded? What should be included and where? One line of code can remove a paragraph of explanation text or more. See that it has our API key right in it. When we play it again, you'll be able to try the API right in line. Next, I've updated the parameters to let you edit them right on the site. Let people tweak code snippets in real time. It reduces so much complexity. Lastly, I've added logs. This is so you can debug what's going on in real time. APIs are a black box. You send off data and hope something positive comes back. Showing API logs to a user removes so much of the uncertainty. Everyone can see exactly what's happening. Okay, let's try this again. Ready, and go. Okay, that was fast. That took like 12 whole seconds. Now, it might seem like comparing apples to oranges. The second version seemed almost like cheating, it was so easy. But both are just docs for the same exact API. Our goal is to get people to the MVC as quickly as possible. And by MVC, I mean minimum viable call. That is the smallest, easiest thing they can do that proves they have everything set up, but does something valuable. There's so many more ways other than just documentation that we can do this as well. One of my favorites is command line tools that wrap APIs. They tend to be very action-oriented and combine multiple APIs. They take care of gluing together everything nicely and printing out the results well. It makes me wonder why we can't make APIs that are as easy to use as CLI tools. We'll talk more about this in a minute. Errors are another great place. Imagine if your error codes didn't just tell you what was wrong, but actually told you how to fix the problem. Or better yet, what if secretly behind the scenes, it corrected your API call? Forget a content type? No problem. Encode your API key in the wrong way? No worries, we got you. Anything you can do to get from error codes to successes will feel like magic. Another option is tools like Zapier. They enable it so many people can make an API call. Why are we so gatekeepery about who gets to use an API? Why do we say only the people who know how to program get to use an API? All right, so back to the original point of the talk. Magic. In my mind, calling an API or developer tool magic is the nicest compliment you can give it. It means the creator has worn down the rough edges so much that you're left with a completely frictionless experience. So, what does magic mean? As developers, we're constantly squaring off with hard problems. So when something comes along and makes one of those hard problems feel effortless, it gives it the same feeling as watching a card appear out of thin air. We know it's not supposed to work that way, but we just saw it do it. We just saw it with our own eyes. It feels like magic. When you think of magic, there's two categories that come to mind. The first is ancient wizardry, an unpredictable, contradicting mashup of elixirs and spells. The other is modern stage magicians, real humans who seemingly defy the laws of physics right in front of us. In terms of Harry's, it's Potter versus Houdini. The magic we're going for is the latter. It exists in our world and is bound to the same physics that we are. Think about a magic trick. The best ones are deceivingly simple, and at the end you know exactly what happened. Most magicians even tell you what's going to happen at the end, before they even start. Sure, you have no clue how it happened, but who cares? You follow the premise from start to finish, and they guessed your card, or they levitated, or something like that. But magic tricks aren't simple. They just look it. It can take years to master something that takes just seconds to perform. Each trick is a combination of technology and technique, hidden out of view of the spectator. Nobody's defying the laws of the universe, they're just obscuring them. If you were to read a how-to on a certain magic trick in a book, it would be pretty mundane. It would be very step-by-step. Sure, some things might take years of practice, but at no point would you not be able to follow the logic. The magic feeling comes from obscuring the steps. A magic trick might have 15 steps or so that the magician performs, but you only see one or two of them. Let's apply this to dev tools. Take something like Vercel, It used to be called Zeit for people who don't know that. You just type in the word now on the command line, and it makes the current directory a fully hosted live website. When you first use it, it feels like magic. Rather than spending minutes or hours configuring things, you just type 3 characters and that's it. You have a full website hosted on the internet. The same 20 steps that are done behind the scenes when you're setting up AWS are still done. Vercel just obscures them for you. So how did they get there? I imagine they start at the end and work backwards. I've of course never designed a magic trick, but I imagine it goes something like this. First, you come up with something audacious. Something that defies all sense of logic. You're going to levitate. You're going to read someone's mind. You're going to teleport. And then you work backwards and figure out how to make it seem like you did that. That's because we can't possibly go the opposite way. We can't start at the beginning and somehow end up somewhere magical because we end up getting bogged down by the rules, whether it's physics or logic or the rules of Rust even. For Vercel, I imagine they start at the end. They probably wondered, what's the fewest characters we can have a user type and still have a fully hosted domain? I bet we can do it in 3. When you start from the beginning, you start thinking about configurations and storage and blah, blah, blah. But when you start at the end, you reframe everything. You're no longer thinking, okay, here's the ways that a user configures the language, but rather you're thinking, okay, how can we figure out what language they're using without actually asking them? And that goes for APIs too. When you decide to build an API and start from the beginning, you start pounding on all the RESTful greatest hits, query params and headers and content types. Why not? But if you start at the end, you'd have a much simpler time at making things easy to use. It's a lot easier said than done though. But no amazing developer experience has ever happened by accident. If there's one you love, it's because someone gave a damn about every single detail, from error messages to documentation to naming to syntax to design to pricing. My favorite definition of magic comes from Penn and Teller, and it sums up this entire talk. Sometimes, magic is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. All right, that is my talk. If you liked it, follow me on Twitter. It's at gkoberger, Gkoberger. If you really liked it, try out README. We do pretty much everything we talked about. And if you really, really, really liked it, we're hiring for both technical and non-technical roles. So go to readme.com/careers. Thank you everyone for listening. And now we have a few minutes for questions, I think.